Hey, what's up everyone? This week I want to tell you about a coding pattern in Swift that is quite powerful and that also combines two of my favorite syntaxes in Swift, property wrappers and KeyPaths. But before I tell you about this pattern, let's talk about the kind of problem that it can help solving. So let's take a look at the code just behind me. As you can see, I've defined a struct called person. There are three properties inside: first name, last name, and age. And then just below you can see I've defined another piece of code. In this piece of code, I start by creating an array of people, so with 4 persons inside. Then some code is going to happen. At some point, I'm going to append new people to the array. And finally, I'm going to use the array for something. Here, I'm just going to print it to the console. And now here's the problem that needs solving. I would like that for its entire lifetime, the content of the array stored in the variable people be sorted. So of course, as you can imagine, I don't want to be calling the method sort by every time that my array is modified. I want this logic to be automatically wrapped around my array. And of course, the obvious solution in Swift to satisfy such requirement would be to introduce a property wrapper. So it would look something like this, and it would make sure that every time the content of my array changes, the array stays sorted. But actually, such property wrapper would be only half of the solution, because of course it would enable my array to stay sorted, but I still need a way to state how my array should be sorted, which property should be used to sort the array. We could imagine solving this by making the type person conform to comparable, but it wouldn't be such a great solution, because here in my code, I actually want the people inside my array to be sorted by their age, but maybe in another piece of my code, I will want them to be sorted by their last name. So it really wouldn't make sense to make the entire type conform to comparable, just to provide the sorting criterion that makes sense for a specific function. So we need to find another way to tell our property wrapper which property to use to keep the array sorted. And as you can imagine, the perfect syntax for this in Swift would be to use a KeyPath. It would look like this, and as you can see, I am using a KeyPath to let the property wrapper know that it should keep the array sorted and that the elements should be sorted by their age property. So we've defined our goal syntax. Here is what I want to be able to use in my code. Now what we have left to do, well, is to actually implement this property wrapper. So let's get at it. First, I create my struct called sorted. Then inside this struct, I'm going to store two pieces of information. First, I'm going to store the array that I need to keep sorted. And as you can see, I've also introduced a generic argument in order for this array to be generic. Then I store the key path I will use to compare the elements of my array. As you can see, this key path is declared as a let constant because it's not going to change once the property wrapper has been created. Then you can see I've also introduced a second generic argument called sort property. It's the type of the property that I will use to compare my elements. And you can see that, as we can expect, I've made this property be comparable because I'm going to have to use a comparison operator with the values returned by this property. Then it's time to turn this struct into an actual property wrapper. So I do this by annotating it with @property wrapper. After that, the next step is to implement the wrap value of this property wrapper. As you can see, and without any surprise, the type of this wrap value is an array of elements. Then I'm going to implement the easy part of this wrap value, which is the getter, because the getter is just returning the array that is stored inside the property wrapper. And then I'm going to implement the setter. So the setter is slightly more complex. As you can see, I take the new value. On it, I call the method sorted by, and in the closure, I use the key path to get the property that is used for the comparison, and I compare the two values. And finally, I assign the result of the method sorted to my array property. Now there's just one thing left to do for us in this property wrapper, which is to implement the initializer. As expected, the initializer is going to take two arguments. First, the wrap value, so the initial value for the array, and then the key path to the property that will be used to compare the elements of the array. And finally, here's the implementation of the initializer. It's pretty straightforward, but I just want to direct your attention to one particular point, which is that, as you can see, I'm going to assign the initial value to the wrap value and not to the array itself. And the reason for this is that this initial value might very well not be sorted. So I want to make sure that it goes through the sorting code, so that it goes through this code right here. And so to do it, I'm going to assign the wrap value this way. The code will go in the setter of my wrap value. And now if I scroll down to the code that we had before, as you can see, now my code is building successfully. And so my combination of a property wrapper and a key path has been successfully implemented. And just to make sure that my property wrapper works as expected, I'm going to execute my code and we'll see what gets printed to the console. And as you can see, it's indeed working as expected. The elements inside the array are stored and sorted in increasing order according to their age. And we've actually reached the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed my explanation of what can be achieved when we combine both a property wrapper and a key path. Personally, I think there is a lot of potential in this pattern because it's really a great way to encapsulate a generic algorithm inside a property wrapper and then be able to customize it to a specific need through one or several key paths. As always, if you find a cool way to use this pattern inside your app, I would be super curious to know about it. So please feel free to share it in the comments. Thank you for watching the video and see you next time.